What if belief in a root cause is itself the root cause? I'm Ray Myers. Welcome to Craft versus Cruft. Actually had my basement flood recently, so we're going to be experimenting with some new filming environments, but I didn't want to wait any longer to get into some of the topics I've got planned, as well as some more interviews coming up. Previous one was with Stephen Weinberg of Morningstar, and that's on interviews. So if you're in a job search right now, definitely you might want to check that out. I've already heard from some people who have been able to incorporate that advice in their job search. Told me it helped out, which is really great to hear. But today, we are going to talk about root causes, or specifically why there isn't one. In honor of the root cause analysis exercise, the 5 whys, we're going to show in 5 ways why there is no root cause. Why do some site reliability engineers, myself included, say that? Why do we say that there's no root cause? Well, it's because failures are better understood as the combination of multiple contributing factors, including the context that allowed them to occur. Now, that context, every part of that has more causes behind it, and so forth, ad infinitum. So that's number one. But isn't a root cause what root cause analysis is supposed to find? Well, almost. RCA is a recursive process that produces not even a single or a chain of causes, but an entire tree extending arbitrarily far back. Are you going to extend your analysis back into the birth of the universe? Realistically, no. You have to stop analyzing somewhere and address what's in your control. But to call that point the root cause would be to deny the recursive nature of RCA. It's like saying you found the bottom row of Pascal's triangle. It's like saying you found the last prime number. It does not compute. That's way number 2. So how important is all this, right? I'm pretty fired up about this right now, but depending on who you ask, this is somewhat persnickety, hair-splitting, and you may only care about this distinction in terminology if you have a particular goal of emphasizing, preventative thinking, systemic thinking about, making your environment more safe. I don't know why you wouldn't be interested in doing that, but specifically that's what we're looking at here. And you're going to find people who are equally passionate, perhaps, about the distinction between the term test and the term spec, or the term test and the term check, or maybe all 3 of these are different concepts. You're going to find different people who are fighting different language battles at any given point. You're going to have to decide which of those you want to take up. If you want to take mine up, more power to you. But I will tell you that without making this distinction, what people will often do is declare the first thing that they notice to be the root cause and stop thinking right there. Oh, we shipped a bug and it causes a problem, so the root cause is that bug. Well, let's think further. A certain context made that bug easy to introduce, and also made it harder to detect before it could do some damage. So definitely peel back the curtain farther on that. In the infamous 2017 S3 outage of US East 1, quote unquote root cause was someone running a command line script that had omitted some arguments that needed to be passed to it and caused it to reboot the entire region as opposed to just the segment that they dealt with. But of course, you don't stop there. The tool allowed them to do that, as their Amazon's postmortem very astutely points out, as well as other reasons that caused more harm than it really should have. Arguably, labeling anything the root cause, leaves you in danger of leaving some value on the table in your analysis there. That's number 3. Now try this on for size. A causes B causes C, right? Very linear. We're describing something that's working according to plan. If you said, okay, I'm going to go to YouTube and search Craft versus Cruft, and lo and behold, my channel pops up, that's very clear, right? What happened? You could say that caused that to occur. Typing it in and hitting enter caused it to pop up. You went to Twitter and you typed in at Lambda Apocalypse, and lo and behold, my profile came up. Hitting enter caused that to happen. Great. When things are working normally, that's a pretty reasonable way to think. What if you had clicked enter and my Twitter profile didn't come up? What if something else happened? Now your brain may be going to all sorts of places. Why might it not have happened? The longer you've worked in tech, the more reasons you could probably come up with why it didn't happen. Perhaps you've got some Wi-Fi issues. Perhaps Twitter's search service is down. In honor of Facebook's outage earlier this week, maybe it's DNS. It's always never DNS till it is. Maybe you misspelled it. Maybe I've removed my account and that's why it didn't come up in the results. Or maybe I blocked your dumbass. How about that? So when we were just looking at something that was working, where were all these factors? Well, they were in there somewhere. They were just abstracted away. But these all represent conditions that need to be in a certain state in order for A to cause B. It was a lot more complicated than that. We just didn't need to be thinking about that in something that was working as it should. In RCA, we are investigating a failure. It is precisely the case where A didn't cause B as expected. So that is where it is all the more important to be thinking about all these extra factors. That's number 4. And lastly, this is not something that SREs just made up the other day. This is actually a formal logical fallacy that's long been known by philosophers and logicians and people who do this sort of thing, known as the fallacy of the single cause, or the complex cause, or causal oversimplification, causal reductionism, one form of reduction fallacy. So it has long been understood that if you even go so far as to construct a deductive argument that uses A caused B, singular somewhere in it, you have likely committed a formal logical fallacy. I'm going to link to that particular fallacy's page on logicallyfallacious.com, which is one of the best websites on logical fallacies, as well as the Wikipedia article on proximate and ultimate causation. And in that, they give the example of the capsize of a ship called the Herald of Free Enterprise. And they look at the question, why did the ship sink? The most immediate thing you could say is, well, it hit a rock, and that tore open a hole in the hull, and so it sank. Okay, great. What's the action item there? Don't hit any more rocks. You're not going to stop a lot of shipwrecks that way. You're going to have to think a little deeper. So why did it hit the rock? It failed to change course to avoid it. Why did that happen? Because it was on autopilot during that time, and the autopilot's data was inaccurate. Why was the data inaccurate? Well, a mistake was made in the ship's construction. Why was a mistake made? Well, the scheduling of labor on the shipyard didn't allow for very much rest, and so on and so forth. And now I'm describing it as just a one-dimensional chain going, surprisingly far back. But actually, this is an entire tree, as I said earlier, and you can actually see what they've come up with after a lot of thought on, the tree of a lot of the conditions that worked in concert to create this situation. That's number 5, and by now, I hope you kind of get what we're talking about here, and you get why this might be a big deal. So if you've decided you're not going to call something the root cause anymore, what do you call these things? I often call them contributing factors, or you could just pluralize. Instead of cause, it's causes. It's one of the causes. Some people say proximal causes. Some people call them the conditions. Some people call them triggers. In my previous RCA video last year, I was also calling them triggers. Since then, I've kind of abandoned that terminology because it's kind of reminiscent of when people talk about, traumatic psychological triggers, and, we don't need to really conflate those terms. But contributing factors is just fine, or those others. So there's a fun little mental exercise to do is every time you see something listed as the root cause, cause, think to yourself, was something missed in how they're presenting this causation here. If you look at the Facebook outage report from what just happened earlier this week, Facebook was down for an entire day, along with Instagram and whatever their other one's called, What the App, let's say. They released kind of a preliminary postmortem, and in that, in one of the paragraphs, they say, we believe at this point the root cause was the DNS configuration change that they attempted to make with a mistake in it. Now, I don't mean to imply that Facebook doesn't understand how root cause analysis is supposed to work. They're very practiced at this, and they have their own kind of flavor similar to an SRE called the production engineer role, which has a lot of the same philosophies. Even in the Google SRE workbook, you see the post-mortem examples, and in the fields they happen to lay out there, they have in the summary, single root cause listed, and then a few lines down they go into multiple causes and factors. So it's definitely possible to have a very developed proper idea of what root cause analysis is supposed to do and still be running around calling stuff the root cause. I contend that makes no sense. Perhaps you'll like to carry that along with you as well. Totally your choice. Leave some comments. Let me know what you'd like to hear about next. Subscribe for more updates as I post more. I really appreciate it. Lets me know you're listening. And remember, when Lao Tzu as a young monk was summoned to the outage retro to determine the one root cause, he said, "Dig up the mighty oak before us, that we may gaze at its root until we discern from which single strand grew the tree." Maybe he didn't say that, but he did say, with patience, the most tangled cord may be undone.